Good evening, everybody. Hope everyone had a great weekend. James Hancock here, and I'm back to review the series premiere of Sharp Objects, a new show on HBO that looks like it's going to be insanely cool. It's based on a 2006 novel of the same name by Gillian Flynn, and unfortunately I've never read any of her books, but another one of her novels, Gone Girl, became the foundation of the film in 2014 by David Fincher. But I like how rather than trying to condense Gillian Flynn's novel into a feature film, they're like, nope, we're going to make an 8-episode miniseries and really flesh it out. And so far, it really feels more like a character study than a psychological thriller, although the teasers I've seen for the rest of the season suggest that there's some very dark, eerie, creepy stuff coming our way. But the show stars Amy Adams as a reporter named Camille Preaker, and while she lives and works in St. Louis, she's from a small town of 2,000 people a few hours away. But when a girl is murdered and another girl goes missing, her paper decides because she's from there, she might be able to get an interesting angle on the story, so they send her back to cover it. But as we start to learn over the course of the story, Camille is a character who's got a lot of dark chapters in her past, including a very troubled relationship with her mother, played by the great Patricia Clarkson. And what's cool is as the show unfolds, it's a mix of investigative journalism into a serial killer, combined with some really eerie, dreamlike flashbacks from her own childhood. And if you're a fan of the movie It, which came out last year, the young Sophia Lillis, she plays Amy Adams as a young girl. What's craziest now, in the sequel to It, where the characters are adults, Jessica Chastain is playing Sophia Lillis' character as an adult. So I guess this girl now is officially the heir apparent to the great redheaded actresses of our time. In any case, what really grabbed me about this first episode is that it wasn't necessarily that plot-driven. It's far more of just a slow burn, but Amy Adams might be turning in the best performance of her career. And I've been following her since the movie Junebug. I think that came out like in 2004, 2005. She's obviously got a ton of incredible work to her name at this point. But I like how the journalist she plays in the show is pretty damaged on a variety of fronts. I mean, first and foremost, she basically drinks booze all day, every day. She's constantly sipping Absolute vodka from these little airplane bottles. But she's also a chain smoker. She has terrible diets, always eating candy bars. And we also learned that she has some mental health issues. However, in the first episode, they don't really do the deep dive into that. As I was doing my research on the show, I read a synopsis of the book, and the synopsis that I read gave me a little bit more information than was presented in this episode. So I don't want to get ahead of myself on that front. But in spite of her dark chapters in her past, Amy Adams is she's in such command of this character, and she seems so confident and so relaxed. And some of my favorite scenes are just of her driving around. Funny, you would think as a reporter that she would listen to talk radio or that she would listen to podcasts, but she pretty much just listens to Led Zeppelin on a loop all the time. I don't think she's updated her playlist in a long time, which is fine by me because when I was in middle school and in high school, I was a Led Zeppelin fanatic. So there were at least 4 or 5 tunes by Led Zeppelin in the first episode alone. Also, I forgot to mention, every single episode of this 8-episode miniseries is going to be directed by Jean-Marc Vallée. I've never seen any of his films before, but he did like The Young Victoria, he did Wild, he also did the HBO miniseries Big Little Lies. And personally, I'm a huge fan of having the same filmmaker do every single episode of a season, especially when it's a short one. I just feel like it allows for a much more consistent storytelling voice. Obviously, TV is a writer-driven medium, it's a producer-driven medium, but now that TV has become so rich visually and cinematically, it's cool seeing these TV auteurs start to emerge, and it's a trend that I'm 100% in favor of supporting. So while there wasn't necessarily a ton of plot in this first episode, there was an enormous amount of tension because Amy Adams' character Camille and her mother Adora, played by Patricia Clarkson, have a lot of unresolved issues. While this small town of Wind Gap, Missouri might only have 2,000 people, with not a lot of industries apart from raising and killing hogs, nonetheless in this town Adora wields a lot of power and control and influence. She and her husband own a lot of the businesses in the area. And not only is Adora not that excited to have her elder daughter coming home to stay with her for a little while, she's incredibly resistant to the idea of her daughter looking into these murders. Patricia Clarkson's character is this weird combination where she's incredibly controlling and domineering, but also at the same time incredibly delicate and flaky in a lot of ways. She's absolutely petrified about any sort of gossip or rumors. She doesn't want anybody stirring the pot. She doesn't want anybody ever getting worked up about anything. She basically just wants to sit in her house and drink and listen to music with her husband and treat her youngest daughter like a little china doll. And that's another thing we learn in this first episode is that Camille has a half-sister named Amma. And while at home, Amma is like the absolute definition of this innocent, pretty little princess being raised to be a proper little lady. However, when Camille sees her little sister around town, she's quite a different character. She dresses almost like an outlaw, and she's partying, she's drinking, she hangs out with a rough crowd, and she's very much living a double life. But one of the reasons things are so tense on the home front is that Camille's younger sister, Marianne, died as a teenager. They never really get into the reasons why, but it's clear that her mother never fully recovered. And it doesn't look like Camille ever really fully recovered either, because at the funeral, when she sees her sister lying in the coffin, she completely melts down. She's trying to basically claw the makeup off her face, and has to be physically dragged out of the funeral. And it seems like all around, this is the town that just keeps a lot of dark secrets. But easily the darkest scene in this first episode is when they find the second murder victim. She's basically been propped up in a windowsill in an alley, and her knees and arms are covered in mud, and she's yet another choking victim. And the tension in the town is starting to reach a boiling point. But also, each time Camille sees something around town, it sparks all these really traumatizing memories. I mean, she has this one eerie memory where she's swimming in a creek, and she sees a bunch of boys hunting, and one of them stops to look at her, and he just sits there and aims his rifle at a while before smiling and walking away. There's another flashback of a cheerleader running through the woods being chased by a bunch of boys. Something tells me we're going to see some really dark, disturbing stuff in the episodes to come, because the very last shot of this episode, spoiler alert, as we see Camille relaxing, indulging in her favorite activity, which is basically sitting in a bathtub and getting absolutely wasted. As she rests her arm behind her head, you see the word vanish has been carved into her arm. And initially I just thought that was a little bit of creative license on the part of the showrunners, because the name of the episode is Vanish. And I was like, oh, that's such a cool way to bring the episode to a close. But when I read the Wikipedia entry about the show, I learned that one of the reasons Camille was in the mental hospital a long time ago was because she had a habit of carving things into her body. In any case, I'm absolutely hooked. I don't know if I'll be doing reviews of each and every episode. It depends on how much plot there is to really dissect and discuss from episode to episode, but I'll definitely be watching the whole season. I was actually a little worried that there wasn't going to be any really cool stuff to follow on TV this summer. I feel like July and August can be kind of a sleepy time when it comes to good shows. But thankfully, due to HBO, between this and Succession, I've got some really cool stuff to enjoy for the next 5 or 6 weeks. At any rate, if what I described sounds appealing to you, definitely check it out. I can't quite say that it's a complete total home run like season 1 of True Detective yet, because I need to see a few more episodes. And I do think the slow, methodical pace of the first episode will be a turnoff to some people. But when it comes to mood and character, I'm absolutely fascinated. And once again, I think Amy Adams very well might be turning in the best performance of her career. But I hope you found my review and reaction useful. If so, please consider subscribing to my channel. If you want to talk more, give me a shout on Twitter at Colbrex, or just leave me a comment in the comments below, and I'll be back later this week with more reviews. But thanks so much for watching my channel. I really appreciate it. Onwards and upwards.